Well, we commented earlier that the weather has returned to the mean. We started out with a great month of March. We are going out now as a traditional month of March. And in my world, we're going to start launching boats at the end of this week. So whether the weather is good or bad or indifferent, we're going to launch boats and spring has begun. So a few more days. Well, welcome everybody. I want to welcome each and every one of you to the Lake Erie Foundation annual meeting, Wednesday, March 27th, 2024. It is now about 5:30. My name is Jim Stouffer, if I haven't had the pleasure to meet you previously, and it is a pleasure to be the president of the Lake Erie Foundation. On behalf of our board, we thank you for attending the 2024 annual meeting. You know, I often comment about how we got involved. We had a meeting today earlier. We said, well, you've been involved in this 15 years and you've been involved in this 10 years, whatever. The fact of life is it goes by quickly. There's a phrase I like. It says the days are long and the years are short. Well, a lot of years have gone by. A lot of us loving the lake and being up here have introduced the fact that Lake Erie is such an important part of our life. I was in a meeting today on some other officials in Ohio, and I can assure you everything about where we live and what we enjoy begins and ends with Lake Erie. If we didn't have Lake Erie along this shoreline, if we didn't have this great natural resource, we would be at a great disadvantage. So I take what we do not as the end all, but as a very important signal to my generation and the generation of children and grandchildren coming along that we care about the lake, we care about our community, and we're going to do our very best to make a difference. I want to, in particular, thank our board members and advisors for their ongoing dedication to the mission, to the foundation's mission. Our board members are Lee Alexikos, Mr. Ken Alvey, Matt Fisher, Larry Fletcher, Mr. Rick Graham, Peter Houston, Mr. Paul Klein, John Lippi, Mr. Len Parton, Dr. Chris Winslow, Mr. Ron Wiss. Our advisors going into the 2024 season, in particular, I want to thank Colleen McDivitt, who has given us so much energy and enthusiasm going forward. Great support from her and her family. I also want to thank Dr. John Hall, Mr. Bill Myers, and Mr. Al Nichols. We want to thank them and thank you for the continued support for the Lake Erie Foundation's mission. 2023, we have focused a considerable time on various issues. I tell people this, I preface my comments to every conversation I have with garden clubs and groups and business groups. Lake Erie Foundation is a small organization. There's only so much we can do. We try to be very disciplined. We try to be very focused. We don't have the time nor the resources to just be out there doing everything. And I also want people to understand your generosity means so much to us because we don't spend a lot of time out raising money. We don't want to be known as someone who's always has their hand out. We take our financial blessings so very seriously, and we really are very cautious to make sure that we manage that properly going forward. But we have several areas, and I'll repeat where we focus on. The wind turbine projects off of Cleveland, Ohio, which was Icebreaker, has been a major focus of ours. And even though some people say, well, that's been put to bed and back on the shelf, wind turbines in the water are not on the shelf. They're an issue we're paying attention to. We're going to talk about that. Matt Fisher, our vice president, COO, is going to address that today. But wind turbines, thankfully, at least in the short run, we had a minor victory going forward. And at this juncture, we are glad to announce that we think wind turbines going into Lake Erie have been put off for a period of time. We also are focused on microplastics. Microplastics are a worldwide phenomenon. There's something that I'm not a chemist, I'm not a scientist, but we just know based on what we read and what we see, plastics is a worldwide issue. Our focus is working with our local collaborative academic and science friends because we need to know how do plastics impact fresh water that 11 million of us drink, the fresh water throughout the Great Lakes region. It's a different science, a slightly different study than if it were strictly in the oceans. So we think, again, the expertise and the scientists are there to help us. And the last item, which is to us kind of has always been the core of our mission, which is the algal blooms. Algae on Lake Erie is not a positive. Algae on Lake Erie has to be addressed. Algae on Lake Erie, we have to learn from all the knowledge that the scientists have gathered. We have to collaborate with our agricultural community, and we have to work closely with all of our communities to solve it. Many of you may have heard about the Campbell Soup plant up the Maumee River that just had a significant spill. Well, the US EPA, the Ohio EPA, our friends at Waterkeepers have addressed that, and they're dealing with Campbell Soup to make sure they understand That is a sewage treatment issue. So thankfully, there are groups out there who are paying attention to things that we can't handle everything. They've helped us tremendously. We're fortunate that we are an organization that believes in collaboration, mutual respect. We collaborate with a number of different groups. I'll give you an example. This past year, we worked with Ohio Sea Grant. We worked with making videos to distribute to students throughout Ohio. These videos are really a way for us to take the expertise of Ohio State University, Ohio Sea Grant, and spread that knowledge throughout the academic community to the next generation. We also have the opportunity to speak at numerous events throughout Ohio. We are invited by different communities, Rotary clubs, garden clubs, and all of us on the board have had the opportunity through our relationships and through introductions, if you will, to a broader community. Because whether you're here on Catawba Island or you're in Ottawa County, Cedar Point, Sandusky, Lake Erie is impacted by all the communities that stretch from Toledo all the way to New York. And we want to make sure that we're working diligently to work with those folks. It is important to me as a small organization, we have a good team. Mary Margaret Laval is our managing director, been with us now several years and does a great job of managing our little organization and helping the board members be effective. We've decided going forward, we have hired a new executive director, Elaine Zhao. Elaine comes to us, with an incredible background academically and with her knowledge of the law and the processes that it takes to implement changes, to implement new strategies throughout the watershed. And the two of them together will give us the strength to take the Lake Erie mission, Lake Erie Foundation mission, and not just make sure we are doing our local work to the benefit of everybody, but it will also give us the opportunity to spread our mission where we are asked to come in. For instance, there's talk of putting wind turbines off the coast of Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania. We've been invited in for that conversation. We're worried that those same conversations may occur in Lake Michigan, off of Wisconsin, off the coast of Chicago and Michigan. So the fact we have knowledge and we've invested in resources to learn what's going on, Elaine, Mary Margaret will help us as a board and an organization move forward to spread the mission. Lake Erie Foundation isn't going to get huge, but we're going to make sure that we share the knowledge that we've gained with others so that we can work together. If we allow these things to occur anywhere in our backyard, it could be a difficult reversal to try and get them back. If wind turbines go in Lake Michigan, I can assure you they will be looking again to Lake Erie to bring wind turbines back here. So we have to be very, very careful. We have great support from so many people. And I know many of you go on the LakeErieFoundation.org website to kind of get updates. We have quarterly newsletters. We communicate with everybody. We are blessed to have over 519 members who are now members of the Lake Erie Foundation. And last year we received donations from over 330 people. Amazing. It's not the business I'm in. I'm not in the business of raising money. I'm in the business of business here on Catawba Island in this community. It's important to me that we do our job first, but to know the passion and the commitment so many individuals have is very heartwarming. I do want to thank, we have business partners who have been part of that network of supporters. We have what we call the champions of Lake Erie, Clemens Boat, Erie and Anchor, and what it became the follow-up to Lake Erie Marine Trade. It's the OMTA, OMTA. They are the Ohio Marine Trade Association now, made up of boat dealers and a network of boating marina community members, and they have been incredible supporters of ours. We have the protectors of Lake Erie level. We have the Hotel Kilbourne, the Andersons out of Toledo, Catawba Yacht Sales, Crown Battery out of Fremont, and South Shore Marine out of Huron, Ohio. These folks are all directly related to the lake in some fashion of commerce or just their commitment. Anderson's being a great example of an agricultural company that truly believes that we can do better, we need to do better, and they've been very supportive of us. We have the preservers of Lake Erie. We have our local the Bassett family, Bassett Market. We have Buckeye Sports Center, the Armington family, Catawba Moorings, Rocky Piacentino, again, Koff Builders out of Cleveland, Mr. Greg Hartman of UBS, and the Ropey Corporation out of Fostoria, Ohio. We have the Skatinsky Financial Group, which out of Perrysburg have been great supporters, and the folks at Boat Michigan. That's a great example, again, of a collaboration with another part of the Great Lakes region, but they believe in the mission of Lake Erie Foundation, and they're supporting us. The final classification, the Guardians of Lake Erie. We have First National Bank, Great Lakes Scuttlebutt, our friends at Sandusky Yacht Club. We have Hotel and Leisure Advisors. We have the hotel on the park on Put-in Bay, the Roundhouse, J&J Sales and Service, Oberwork, and the Boardwalk South Bass Properties. The Booker family, fantastic friends for many years. Middle Bass General Store, one of my favorite places to go. And we have the Wyborskis, Edward and Michelle Wyborski, longtime boaters and folks who've been active here in Catawba. So when you take their support, you take the support of so many people, it allows us as a small entity to keep the engine going, keep the initiatives going. And that's our goal. We're not going to change that. We're not going to grow into something we're not, but we're going to do our best to help influence the conversation and move things forward. I would now like, and thank you all for being here, but I want to thank all the different officers we're going to bring up for a quick little introduction of summary of our year. First, I'd like to introduce Lee Alexakos as our secretary. Lee, would you be kind enough to present your report, please?
Thank you, Jim. Per Article 2, Section 2, election and term of Lake Erie Foundation's Code of Regulations calls for an election of directors. The directors up for re-election for additional 2-year terms are Matt Fisher, Larry Fletcher, John Lippi, Len Parton, Dr. Chris Winslow, and Ron Wiss. So I would like to make a motion to approve the renewal of the aforementioned directors for an additional 2-year term. And I will need a second. Thank you, Rick. We have a second. A motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor of approving that lineup of directors, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Jim?
Thank you, Lee. I would now like to introduce Mr. Larry Fletcher, who is going to give us our 2023 financial report. Larry?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. As Jim mentioned, we're very fortunate to have outstanding business supporters and members, and we appreciate that very much. It helps us have a strong financial position currently. I want to thank Mary Margaret, our managing director, who they don't let me touch the money. I just get to report about it. But she handles. Well, I don't spend it either, but yeah. So thanks to Mary Margaret, she is a shepherd of the dollars that we're fortunate to have and keeps good track of our budget. So on 12/31/23, the foundation had cash balances of $392,676, liabilities of just $6,117. That was accrued and withheld payroll taxes, credit card payables, and accounts payable. 12/31/22, for comparative purposes, $347,401. Liabilities were $15,290. That consisted of accrued and withheld payroll taxes, credit card payables, and accounts payables as well. Fixed assets were the same for both 22 and 2023, $7,043. Accumulated depreciation of $6,519 in 2022 and $6,984 in 2023. We're very fortunate to have a fund balance, an endowment fund balance on 12/31/23 that was at $959,671. There was a restricted portion of that, which was $569,768. And then in 22, for comparative purposes, $972,987, of which $625,645 was restricted. Revenues, which includes membership dues from generosity of people in this room, sponsorship, donations, and grants, $260,399 in 23 versus $318,337 in 2022. And we had a decrease in our operating expenses, $228,925 in 2022, and slightly less at $219,101 in 2023. So the bottom line on all of that is we're in a strong financial position and ready to take it to the next level as we go into 2024.
Thank you very much. Now on to a different topic. I want to introduce Peter Houston. Peter heads up our plastics committee. Peter's going to give us a little synopsis where we are. He works diligently on Put-in Bay and lives the lake firsthand. So his contributions on this topic, I think, are just the beginning and very much appreciated.
Thanks, Jim.
Mr. Houston.
All right. All right. How you doing today? So this has been a busy year for us for plastics. I don't know if you read the Blade, the Toledo Blade, but there was just an article in there just this week about microplastics. And microplastics are constantly in the news, and they're in our water. They're in our drinking water. The PFAS, have you ever heard of them? The polyfluorocarbons are also in the news. And the good news about that is that at least now we have some minimum standards that we're going to be able to use to be able to create a baseline for enforcing and regulating those chemicals to be in our drinking water. I wanted to quickly take a moment to thank Len Parton, Ken Alvey, Colleen McDivitt, John Lippi, Rick Graham, Mary Margaret, and Matt Fisher for all their help in this whole long year of working on the plastics. We have an outreach plan. You know, we have a great website that Mary Margaret has put together, and it has been a great source of information. If you get a chance and you want to take a little time to go through it, you'll find a whole page of information all about plastics, which has been used by a lot of schools. And I've gotten a number of calls through Mary Margaret of students that are using our website to be able to do research, and they call up or they send email questions, and I've been able to answer every one of them. So that's a good starting point for how we can get the information out to people that are interested in learning about this. The second thing is that I've been able to go out and give a number of talks on microplastics. I've gone to a number of different organizations, from Lakeside to this year I was invited by Leadership Ohio to talk to a number of the members of the Leadership Ohio group that get together. They come from all different parts of the industry in Ohio to talk about important issues. And so they listened to me talk a little bit about plastics and how they could make a difference when they go back into their work world. We also, continue to try to get our message out about the 4 R's of plastic use. I don't know that it's on the tip of everybody's tongue, but if you leave here today and you start using this as your mantra, it's refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle. Refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle. And if we can think about that in our daily lives of how we interact with plastics, it starts with, you're at a restaurant and somebody says, I'll get you a container, and you realize that it's a plastic container. Well, maybe there's an alternative way that they can give that to you to take it home. There's just little things that we can do as consumers that will change how the plastics are consumed. We've been at a number of public awareness events this year. We're at the Cleveland Boat Show. We'll be at the CIC Boat Show coming up in a couple of weeks. We have a Lake Erie Awareness Day. If you get a chance, it's on August 8th over on Put-in Bay. It's organized by Ohio State's Sea Grant program. There are a number of great learning stations all throughout the island, and it's a family event. Great time to be able to learn a little bit about how we're interacting with our environment. And we use those kinds of opportunities to be able to continue to share our information about plastics and algal blooms and the wind turbines. And then, of course, in this past January at the Cleveland Boat Show, we were able to give out these stickers that had the refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle mantra, as well as straws, and a wonderful workbook. You may have seen it when you came in here today, for children to be able to interact on a really meaningful level about what some of these issues are all about. I also wanted to say that we're really excited to announce that we are sponsoring Josh Dykstra's Irresponsible. Perhaps you've heard of Irresponsible. They do beach cleanups, and they will be out there this year. And we really want you to be able to interact with those. And if you have a community where you would like to be able to have a beach cleanup, you can contact us or contact Josh. They have a website It tells you all about how their program works. Finally, I just had a recent call with Jill Bartolotta from Ohio State University's Sea Grant program about microplastics and what we can do. And there are a number of initiatives that we're considering for 2024 and a number of legislative opportunities that may come forward this year. I just wanted to take one moment to talk about one of them from Michigan, which is nurdles. Has anybody ever heard of a nurdle? They sound cute, but they're not. They're these little tiny plastic pellets that are used in all of the plastics manufacturing, molds, types of plastics. And it turns out that nurdles are not a substance that if we had a rail derailment like we did in New Palestine and nurdles spilled on the ground, there's no laws to be able to pick them up. So Michigan has taken this as issue, and they are considering a bill to make it now legally liable to pick up nurdles if they get spilled. And I think this is a good start because they get into our water supply. We see them, all the time in the plastics and the beach and the cleanup. And a few years ago, you may remember we used to have skin cleaning creams that had these little beads in it. And those little beads, every time you washed your face, would go into the water supply and into the sewage, and they went into our water. And so now that has at least been reduced and removed from our consumption. But these nurdles are out there and other things like that that we need to be able to put into place a way to be able to clean them up. So I think we know that the plastics problem is big. We want to make it a priority. We want to make it a priority for our legislators from both the state and nationally. And I think that as the Lake Erie Foundation goes forward this year, we're going to try to pick a few really important things like education to be able to continue to get this information across. So thank you very much. Hope I didn't take up too much time.
Quick question.
Yeah, sure.
What about bottled water? I've been reading about the bottled water is not safe. The plastic, I don't know. I don't have the right.
Nanoplastics, yes.
So that we shouldn't even be drinking bottled water in plastic.
It's amazing how many different ways the plastics are getting into our drinking water. And we need to elevate this issue to a point where it can be regulated, because it's not. At this point, there is no minimum standard for how much plastics we can drink. And we do know that, that our filtration systems, there was a researcher, his name was Len, what was his name? There was a researcher for Ohio State who did a whole in-depth research process where they looked to see how much of the microplastics are being filtered out in the Cuyahoga. And good news is it's about 80%. Bad news is there's no bottom standard for what should be there and what is still there. So we have a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Many people know Peter is the chairman of the Great Lakes Island Alliance. He has relationships throughout the Great Lakes for families and people who live on islands. Well, those relationships have paid dividends to us because he's been able to learn from them and help us share our mission to others. So we're all in this together. Peter, thank you very much. I would now like to introduce our Vice President and CRO, Mr. Matt Fisher. Matt's going to chat a little bit about H2 Ohio, State of Ohio, Governor DeWine's initiative that is evolving now throughout the state, and also about the Icebreaker wind turbine project off of Cleveland. He has, I think, some pertinent information I think you'd like to hear. So Matt, thank you. And Matt hates this, but without Matt Fisher, this organization would not have moved forward and will not move forward. So his involvement is greatly underappreciated by those who don't know that, but I just want to make it a public pronouncement. So thank you, Matt.
None of that is true. Can everybody hear me without the microphone? I don't do well behind a podium. Oh, I need a microphone? Oh, okay. Well, I'll stand. Oh, can I carry it? Yeah, I can carry it. Yeah. Okay. First, Jim did a good job of laying out the initiatives that we focus on. And I'll just add one sentence to say, if you go on our website, you'll see the 6 or 8 different issues that impact Lake Erie. And we have a position, I'll say, on each one of those, but we focus on the 3 that we feel like we can have an impact, where we can actually make a change to how the project is proceeding, and you'll see what I mean hopefully in a couple of minutes. Peter's done a great job educating with plastics. We've been trying to also make the same type of headway with harmful algal blooms. And how many people have heard of the program H2 Ohio? So I'm going to briefly re-explain it for those 25% of the hands that did not go up. H2 Ohio is made up of 3 different segments. One would be under Ohio EPA, and they focused on, I'll say, drinking water and wastewater treatment plants, primarily getting the lead pipes improved in certain parts of the state of Ohio. Ohio Department of Natural Resources actually has spent a lot of good time in the last 4 years building wetlands. Most of the wetlands have been in the Western Basin area. They actually got a jump on the other divisions, other agencies, because they were prepared in the fall of 2019. 2019 was when H2 Ohio was created. And they have probably 180, 190 different wetlands throughout this part of the state and further west. The part that we've been spending most of our time on would be the agriculture section, under Ohio Department of Agriculture. And just so you know, the governor put $175 million a year in these different programs for these 3. Most of it goes to agriculture. And what H2 Ohio is with the agriculture section is about 8 to 10 different practices that would help farmers reduce runoff their fields. And they mainly deal with the application of nutrients, not necessarily the management of those nutrients as they run off, or what we call water management. And so the agriculture section probably lost 1.5 years due to COVID. So we really didn't get started with H2 Ohio with agriculture until the summer of 2021. And within 12 months, maybe 9 months, 35% of the acres in Northwest Ohio actually signed up for H2 Ohio, which is a very impressive number. It's now up to, I think, 38 or 40%, which is very helpful. But my story kind of takes a little bit of a left-hand turn now, that we really haven't seen the improvement in water quality that we would have expected 2.5 years later. And on one hand, if you've noticed, we haven't had a horrible bloom, a 2015, 2014 type of bloom for the last 5 years. And that's mainly been climate related, either too much rain or not enough rain, either too much rain in the fall or not enough rain in the spring. So the farmers didn't have enough crops out, or for whatever reason. So we've been lucky, for lack of a better word, for what has happened. And sometimes that lack of a big bloom has caused some people to say, oh, H2 Ohio is working. H2 Ohio has shown some small improvements in water quality, but not the big ones we were hoping for at this point. But what Lake Erie Foundation has been doing for, as Jim said, very many years, some folks have been on this for 20 years, is that we've been trying to say that there are certain fields, whether you want to say there are 13% of the fields out there or 20%, that are causing more of the phosphorus runoff than the other 80%. And it's nothing against the 35% or 40% of the farmers that have signed up. I just want to take a moment just to applaud those farmers and the leadership of the governor and everybody for getting 35% of the farms to sign up. But those are likely not the hot spots, not the fields that are causing most of the runoff. For the last many years, we've been promoting the idea that there's a smaller percent, 15 to 20%, they're responsible for a greater runoff. Jim and I met with the Department of Agriculture just about 1 year ago, I'll say multiple times, in February, March, and then another larger meeting where we brought in scientists in June that would show that there was this dynamic of small number of fields resulting in more runoff. And I'm just here to tell you now that after seeing this, we're seeing a little bit of a sea change where the leaders of H2 Ohio are actually accepting that these higher phosphorus fields are resulting in more of the runoff. When Mary Margaret and I actually met with the leaders of H2 Ohio last July, and we said, how can we help you? And they said, we want this 35% to be 70%. And we were saying in a very nice way, that isn't the way to improve this. We really need to go after this 15 or 20% that are causing the problems. And that was just not the tone of what they wanted to do at that time. So to give more concrete to this, in January, the Ohio Department of Agriculture actually called a meeting with Lake Erie Foundation and Chris Winslow, who's hopefully on the Zoom, and told us that they are actually starting a study that would be focusing on these high phosphorus fields. It's a small study, but nonetheless, they actually called us out for helping recommend that they give this greater focus. So sometimes when you turn to look optimistic, you might look stupid at the same time. So I'm trying not to be overly optimistic, but I'm feeling a little bit of a sea change. We need to keep pushing this, but stay tuned as we try to give more information on how we're making some improvements in where the focus is. So next, I'm going to do a pretty big change to the icebreaker project. Jim's already alluded to it, but we did put quite a bit of effort into opposing the icebreaker project in Cleveland. Raise your hand if you remember what that project was. It initially was going to be 6 wind turbines in front of Cleveland, but the ultimate plan was to be about 1,500 wind turbines, to be a very large island that would be in front of Cleveland. And we had a pretty disciplined way that we were showing a lot of the leaders, a lot of the legislators down in Columbus, why this was not a good idea. And the project was terminated for reasons that are probably more than anything, that just the cost is out of this world to build the turbines out in front of in the lake, to maintain them, and to disassemble them in 25 years when they need to come down. Our style, our brand, our temperament, whatever you want to call it, is not to spike the ball on something like this. As Jim says, we're not going to say, in bold letters on our webpage that it's dead, we helped kill it. That's not what we want to do. Number one, that's just not our tone. That's not our temperament. We've been professional on how we've handled this. We know a lot of the people who are actually managing the icebreaker project, and we've maintained good relationships with them. But Jim said 2 months ago, there's going to be a project in Wisconsin that's going to pop up. And I was kind of saying, I'm not going to Wisconsin to fight this thing. But then we just got called 2 weeks ago from literally a representative from the Pennsylvania state legislature contacted Mary Margaret at through our webpage and said, can you help us, give a position on this? So we, I don't know if we're supposed to feel good, but they knew that we had some level of expertise on how to methodically walk through a defense on how to address it, how to show some of the issues when you start building wind turbines in front of in the water. It's an expensive and tough proposition. So they use that there. We have a relationship with those folks now. So again, this project is not going away. Hopefully we're going to have capability to have a 4th and 5th initiative that we can give more focus to. But right now we got our ears to the ground that there could be another wind turbine project, whether it's in Lake Erie or in some other part of the Great Lakes. So with that, I don't know if we want to take questions or comments or whatever, but we can either take them now or at the end of the meeting. I kind of walked through all those topics pretty quickly. Yeah.
15 to 20% of the offending land runoff, are those identified?
No. Let me answer it more clearly.
Please repeat the question.
So the question was that when we say there's 15 to 20% of the fields that are on the Northwest Ohio that would be causing the runoff, are those identified? And I would say we don't know where those fields are. And I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but somebody does. And there's quite a few what we call ag retailers that would either help a lot of these smaller farmers that with their equipment that they may not own, or just help them regulate how much phosphorus or how much fertilizer they put in the ground. There are folks who do know. And I think that one other thing I hope I can leave you with is, I don't know if you remember, maybe 4 years ago, the citizens of Toledo voted for a Lake Erie Bill of Rights. I think it was called LEBOR or something like it, Lake Erie Bill of Rights, where citizens of Toledo could represent Lake Erie and sue a farmer for having fields that were beyond their control, or that were high and resulting in phosphorus. We don't want to take that perspective. Farmers are not, we don't want to point fingers at farmers. We want to help. These are not words. We actually stand behind this. We want to help farmers manage their land so that they can reduce phosphorus runoff. We don't want to fine them or put them on the front page of the Blade. We want to help them. And that truly has been our mantra. And farmers are actually very reluctant to step forward because they might still fall under this scrutiny of looking like they're polluting the lake. We do not want to do that, but we are involved in a team that is trying to communicate to those folks to find those fields. Because if we could just find, and I'm not trying to be sloppy, but just half those fields, we could have a significant impact on what gets run off downstream. Yeah.
But isn't there an effort to, and I don't have the right verb, reseed those areas? I grew up on a farm and I can understand the farmer's perspective, but if there is a way of changing so that the phosphorus is absorbed in the planted area?
Yeah, you might really be getting into something that's very significant and kind of complicated, but a lot of these fields have so much phosphorus in it that if you did nothing, it would take 30 years for them to get down to a level that would be acceptable. And we are trying to work with our friends at different universities that would help these farmers catch the water. Water management is actually kind of the new buzzword as far as manage that water that is carrying phosphorus off the field, whether it goes into a filter the size of a bus or a ditch, that it would actually reduce the amount that would fall into the tributary. So you're 100% right. And a lot of these farmers, 20 years ago, farmers were told to put on as much fertilizer as they could and they'll get bigger yield. And 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, that stopped. So that's a very good point.
On a similar topic, does the Lake Erie Foundation have any recommendations or policies related to the growth, continued growth of concentrated animal feeding operations in Western Ohio, Southeastern?
That's a good question. Our formal answer back would be, we believe there can be profitable farming and clean water at the same time. We would like the growth of new animal operations to not expand while there's still capability for these animal operations to build facilities that would not allow for the proper handling of the nutrients. I garbled that. I'll try to say it again if I didn't say it clearly, but we don't want to, we're not going to be the ones standing in the back of the room when they're having a vote on this and scream, don't. There's plenty of organizations that are doing that. Our desire is for new operations to have the capability to appropriately manage their nutrients so they don't run off. Does that make sense? Or?
But you don't have to manage their sewage coming off of cows. Is it 400? But there's anyway.
400. What's the number? So
I want to say it's 400. So maybe you might know. I think there's 400 head of cattle, for example. They would have to have a strategy for processing that waste, but it's $3.99, not so much.
This is without a doubt the most knowledgeable annual meeting group that we've had. I don't know if we have a loaded audience, but what you're saying is there's this group that it truly is divided very clearly in clear numbers between small, medium, and large farms. The large farms are permitted, and contrary to a lot of folks' belief, it's possible that those large CAFOs are actually, their fields are managed very appropriately. They might have low soil counts. The mid-sized farms are what you just referred to as one-unders. For hogs, I think it's 2,500 is the difference between a mid-size and a large farm. And for cattle, I think it is 1,000. So we do affectionately call those folks the one-unders. And they are not under as much scrutiny as the large CAFOs. And I'll just leave it at that. That the part of what you were asking earlier about, do we know where those farms are? Those mid-sized farms might be using a lot more of these ag retailers to manage their property and manage their fields. And we want to work with those ag retailers to help that.
There's only so much mitigation to do with an endless ceiling of manure, right? Like there's no.
Yeah, and
I asked the EPA director several years ago, does Ohio have a ceiling in mind? And I was told it's more of a political number than a scientific number, whatever. And I'm not trying to beat a dead horse.
no, you're not beating a dead horse. There are so many things we don't know about manure. We don't know where the manure goes when some of these farms ship it down the road. We don't know what soil count that ends up on. So it's an outstanding point. It is an issue. We do address it. Our way of addressing this is going to the agencies, the legislators, and trying to have a mature business conversation to say, what can we do to help here, rather than screaming and yelling to say, don't open up this farm, as tempting as that might be. Any other questions? Yeah.
There was 35% of the farmers that signed up for H2O.
I said that one, 35% of the acres, which is actually bigger. So, yeah.
What were those farmers that signed up for? What did they commit, or what type of commitment did they have towards the program?
So there's 10 different practices. And when we say 35%, at 35% is now said to be 38%, are utilizing at least one of those 10 practices. So they're getting dollars. Go ahead.
Volunteer type program.
It's 100% volunteer. And that, without pointing fingers, it's just human nature that the folks that volunteer are probably the farms that might be the cleanest, for lack of a better word. Yeah.
Do we work with any farmer organizations that endorse and, can push these initiatives? I don't know if there are any farmer organizations that they're all part of, let's say, and that organization may push the same things that we're pushing.
That's a good question. We work with the Farm Bureau. I don't know that we necessarily are on the relationship to have cocktails on Christmas Eve with the Farm Bureau, but we know quite a few folks at the Farm Bureau, and we have an understanding, and they know our intentions are good. We actually went to the Farm Bureau the same time that Jim and I went to Ohio Department of Agriculture, and we said, we want to start one of these studies where we're focusing on these small fields. So these are, I would say, beyond the Farm Bureau and Ohio Department of Agriculture, we haven't ventured beyond those folks, because if we can keep our relationship with those two groups, we are making slow progress. We feel like that's the best way to go.
Along those lines of corporations that are involved with farming, I don't begin to understand how farms are run or individually, but are any corporations involved with you yourselves, or have they spoke out on this or opposed it?
So which kind of corporations?
That there would be, there are corporations involved in owning farms?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Have any of them opposed this or spoke out, or?
No,
No.
I mean, that's a blunt no, but I would say that we haven't been able to get to the large corporations that might own farms. Again, we've kept I hope this doesn't sound limited, because it's actually big calls. When we work with the Farm Bureau and work with the Ohio Department of Agriculture, we know that there are groups that own significant large sizes of farms, but we haven't gone around them to get to those folks, if that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt, very much for all your work and the engagement. As you can see, I mean, we've said from the beginning, as I'm going to repeat a little bit, we think Ohio should be the #1 ag state in the country. We'd love it. It's good. It's $100 billion business. It supports our communities. It supports our counties. It supports so many things. I've read numerous times the United States is the only food independent country in the world. We're the only country that can feed all of our citizens and still export food to the rest of the world. That just didn't happen overnight. It takes hard work and dedication by the ag community, great science, great, technology. And that's something we should cherish and we should celebrate. But to Matt's point, what we're trying to do is create a collaborative solution. People who can come in and say, we have too much of this, what can we do with it? Manure is a good example. Well, wastewater treatment plant just down the road hauls their sludge out every month or two and takes it to the same spots around Ohio to lay it in the farm field. They're running out of places. And that cost of transportation and cost of moving that sludge is enormous. So the problem is in front of all of us. The solution hasn't been sorted out yet, but given the ingenuity and the determination of industries that understand this is a problem and they're not running from it, that will be the solution. I just saw an article on South Florida, the Lake Okeechobee, the Everglades. They're not spending tens of millions. They're spending billions of dollars to solve their problem in that region of the country. And that we're not spending billions here yet. I don't suggest we spend billions, but I suggest we come together in the most efficient manner with the best talent to help bring this to an improvement. And it's to the credit of people like Matt and all the folks that we've been able to meet, that I've yet to meet anybody who just said, get out. Nobody says that. They just, it's got to be a process that takes some time, and it has to be done properly, and it has to be with Midwest sensibilities, I would argue, in a way that will be good for all of us who love the lake and good for those individuals who are part of the agricultural world that feeds and gives us nutrition at a reasonable price. So LEF is not going to solve it, but we're going to be there with determination and persistence to keep stimulating the conversation. And it's, again, in closing, it's because of all of you and all the supporters we have that our little organization can continue to move forward. We've redesigned our organization now to use that knowledge and help others, which is very important, and to take the background of our team so we can do a better job going forward. And, it's an honor to work with this board and all the folks and the contributions they make financially, you make financially and otherwise, because this is all we have. Without Lake Erie, without the beauty and what we enjoy on this lake, this is a tough place to survive in December and January, February. We know the great days are coming. We know what we can enjoy, and we know what it does for our communities and the next generation coming forward. We have a phrase, I'll repeat it, and then I'll bring this to a close. Lake Erie Foundation, together, we will continue to be Lake Erie's voice for business, for pleasure, hopefully forever. So thank you all for joining us, and we appreciate the input. We're available. Different board members will be here tonight, and we look forward to working with you going into the new year and appreciate all the support. And God bless all of you. Thank you so much.